Welcome everyone to our webinar on European funding opportunities for sustainable cities. My name is Riccardo Scarinci and I'm the national contact points for European funding for mobility and information and communication technologies. The idea that cities are polluted, gray agglomeration belongs to the past. Cities are now transforming in hub of innovation, inclusivity, and sustainability. This is possible only thanks to the use of research and innovation funding, of which the European Commission offers unprecedented opportunity specific for sustainable cities. But of course, this funding needs you, needs researchers, innovators, but most of all, municipalities and policymakers to work together in order to reach the sustainability goal of cities. If you think that cities, the goal of sustainability in city cannot be reached, I have a message from you from Bertrand Piccard. Many of you already know Bertrand is a Swiss explorer, innovator, and extremely active in the fight against climate change and climate neutrality. He decided to record a message specific for this event to inspire you, focusing on municipalities and cities to join the fight against climate change and use European funding to reach the goal of sustainability.
In the fight against climate change, Europe has set a very ambitious goal to be carbon neutral by 2050. Is it realistic? Of course, yes, because solutions exist everywhere. Clean technologies, renewable energies, in order to be more efficient. And the Solar Impulse Foundation has identified up to now more than 700 of these solutions that can protect the environment in a financially profitable way. But we have to implement them. And for this, the cities, the municipalities at local level have a tremendously important role to play. It's not international negotiations that reach nothing. It is local implementation of decisions, technologies, and solutions. Can Switzerland do it alone? We are not alone. Europe has set an unprecedented funding program that can help innovative cities to reach this goal. So if you apply to this program, you can be funded by this European help and support. And this will not only help you to be a clean, smart, and efficient city, it will also show the example that it is possible, and it will develop local innovation, local industries that can bring the solutions worldwide to show what we can do. We can do it in Switzerland, we can have the support of European funding, and we can make the example again that Switzerland is at the forefront of innovation.
So we created this event to help you reaching these funding opportunities and making an impact toward sustainability. To do so, we structured this event in two main parts. The first part is an overview of the funding opportunities offered by the European Commission, and we have the pleasure to have Harry Twinder presenting this part. And then we will move to a second part in which we have three invited speakers from innovative municipalities in Switzerland that will show you sustainability projects that are currently happening. We will start with the city of Zurich with Martina Blum, then we will move to the city of Basel with Frederick Heidmann, and we will end with the city of Morges with Mark Bungener. These three cities have been chosen for their innovation quality, but also to show you that cities at all sizes should participate toward sustainability. So we start from Zurich with almost 500,000 inhabitants, we go to Basel with 200,000, and we reach Morges with 15,000. to show you that independently from the size of the municipality that you are working in or you would like to work with, your support is needed. So now, without further ado, I leave the floor to Harry Twinder from the European Commission. He works as the Director General for Research and Innovation. Thank you very much, Harry, for being with us.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Harry Twinder, as was stated. I work indeed at the DG Research and Innovation. I'm part of what is called the Cities Mission Secretariat. And that means that we are with a group of people, not very numerous, trying to support the preparation for the Cities Mission, which is a new instrument to be implemented under Horizon Europe. So let me go to the next slide, please. So basically, I will try to address for you three main elements, which is the city's mission itself, which had been handed over actually 2 weeks ago to the Commission as an advice from the Mission Board. I will speak a bit about the European Green Deal call and where we are with the Horizon Europe discussions there, because they are still not finished, as you may know. Next slide, please. So basically, the idea of the missions came from Professor Matsukato and also from Pascal Lamy, where the idea was when they looked at the midterm review of Horizon 2020 and also the preparation for Horizon Europe, one of the ideas was to actually do something which is understandable for the general public, is being time limited and trying to bring research and innovation much nearer to the citizen and have actually the citizen as the center of developing these missions. There were 5 mission areas identified at that time, and you see them here projected in the screen. You have the adaptation to climate change, the healthy oceans one, the cancer one, the soil health and food one, and the climate neutral and smart cities one. So what happened is that these areas were identified, and what the Commission has done is it asked for advice on these areas, how to develop this and make proposals. And for that, it established 5 mission boards. Next slide, please. These mission boards are actually 15 independent experts, very well known in the field. We had to do this in a way where people were chosen because of what they represent there, whether it's citizens associations, industry, academia, also politicians were there, well, former politicians. And we had to take into account also to have a geographical representation there. These people were nominated 1 year ago, a little bit more, and then started their work mostly in September last year for trying to develop what would be a climate neutral and smart cities mission there. Next slide, please. So what did they do? Their role is that they had to identify what this mission should look like, how could it be translated in work programs, and that basically should be done in a way that they actually try to reach out to citizens, to municipalities, to stakeholders, to speak with them about what is needed, what would make sense, how could things move forward for a city's mission. They were also looking at the conditions, how that could be basically implemented there. And they are looking at communication, policy coordination, and then obviously also what kind of key performance indicators could be used to monitor what the mission would be about. Next slide, please. So you see here the 15 members of the mission board. Originally, there was also a Swiss representative, Monsieur Picard, who you just heard. However, due to all his obligations, he was not able to participate fully in the beginning in the mission board. and he was replaced by Daniel Termont, a former mayor of the city of Gand in Belgium. So these people started to work, as we said, on trying to define what a mission could be looking like for smart and neutral cities. And they have done a tremendous work during 1 year, also taking into account that in between, obviously, we had the corona pandemic and some other issues there. So it is really worthwhile to congratulate them that they delivered their advice 2 weeks ago, which looks like a very nice report there. Next slide, please. So what is at stake? And Monsieur Picard already said it a bit. Cities are obviously a very important player if you want to go to climate neutrality, as was being announced by the Commission President von der Leyen for 2050 for European continent. It is supposed to be 75 to 85% of people who live in cities by 2050. And obviously, if we want to, let's say, fulfill the promises and the engagements under the Paris Agreement and the Agenda 2030 and the Green Deal, cities would be the place where actually things will have to happen. Otherwise, there would be no fulfilling of those obligations there. Next slide, please. So what was the mission proposal there? And I will come back on that a little bit later also in the presentation. What they actually did do is they basically proposed what they call a multi-level co-creative process, which should end up into something which they call a climate city contract. What does it mean? And I will also come back on that later. It means that it would be a city committing to climate neutrality in 2030, but not just committing to climate neutrality in 2030, but also that this process would be inclusive. It would basically be also involving all the stakeholders there. It should have support from probably member states as well there. And it basically also sets down how to achieve this in co-creation with technical advice and also with the Commission there. So it is really a co-design, co-implementation process with citizens, because one of the proposals of the mission board and one of the findings there is that if you don't have citizens being involved actively as really the agents of change for climate neutrality, they don't think it would be sustainable to what is done. Now, there are many barriers there. We speak about participatory governance, how to do integrated urban planning, innovation management. There's a barrier of the money, which we'll come back as well later, because there will be huge investment needed for this. But probably the biggest challenge, at least what we have seen till now, is if it can be done in a systematic way, meaning not sectorial anymore, looking at transport or looking at energy or looking at digital, but trying to put it in a coherent package where all these things are being put together there. And then obviously in a way that you make a business case that it's not just seen about it costs a lot, but it also can bring a lot, not only for the citizens, but also for local industries and for investors. And next slide, please. So the first concrete thing what we have done in the Commission is that we use the opportunity of having the European Green Deal call to create something like a precursor for the city's mission. The city's mission, as you know, will be under Horizon Europe, and I also will come back on that, but Horizon Europe, also the budget yet has not been decided, neither about the missions. So what we did do is we used the European Green Deal call to basically trying to establish a precursor, which would also help to start the process of getting to climate neutrality for the cities who want to be part of this quicker than we would be under Horizon Europe. Next slide, please. So the the call has been published, as you probably will know. And what is the challenge there? As we know, it's the climate neutrality, the cities who are objectives, who are basically the 70% of global CO2 emissions. And we try to have, and that's the objective of the action, to support the cities in this systematic transformation to climate neutrality. And this is a big challenge. Probably you know as scientists or as local authorities more about than we do. But what we have seen there in our interactions with cities, with citizens as well, there are big bridges to come over. For example, when speaking with one city where there were initiatives about a green street and how to get to a green street, the link to a green European continent there. All kinds of things like this came up, which have been a very interesting and challenging part there. So next slide, please. So first of all, the big discussion is what is a city? Again, you will see in the call that it has been described in a rather flexible way, because the whole point is that if we would take the classical definition of a city, which is 50,000 or more inhabitants, it would have basically meant that in some countries there would be no cities who could participate in this exercise there. We also have seen that for several big cities, even when they would express their wish to become climate neutral in 2030, this would be completely unrealistic in terms of monies which would be needed. So as you see, you have also areas and districts who could be part of this whole process there. So what is the idea of the call? It is that it should basically trying to have the climate neutrality part by 2050 in leading cities and districts there. It would be also a way of doing things where social innovation, leaving nobody behind, just transition, as it is also known in Commission language, would play a big role. And it would have the citizens as part and really a central part of this whole way of getting to climate neutrality there. Next one, please. So the idea of the call is to develop a one-stop shop platform which would help cities to basically prepare and implement their climate action plans related to social innovation as well, and the necessary technical, regulatory, financial, socio-economic expertise and assistance. So what it tries to do in this one-stop shop is, when we discussed with cities, cities are doing tremendous number of things already in sectorial areas, like, as we said before, urban development, integrated built environment, mobility, also social innovation, but it's very much sectorial, not really always linked together. This one-stop stop platform is trying to help that to put this together into what is called a climate action plan for this city, and tries to develop this together with the city and the other stakeholders there into something which would be sustainable from the way of going to a climate neutrality by 2030. And this could be for districts as well, as I said. Who could be involved? It's research organizations, obviously, and academia, but also industry, which would have to play a very big role about implementation. It's about deployment here, and the financial sector, because what we will see as well for the Cities Mission report, there is an enormous investment needed if you really want to deploy technologies and deploy technological solutions to get to this climate neutrality there. So there are 4 activities which are supposed to be covered by the proposers for this call. This is the climate action plan part, the Green Deal innovation, investment project preparation, it's always nice to engage in all kind of promises, but if there's not a sustainable investment plan behind that, it would not make much sense. To see how social innovation and citizens engagement would be involved in that climate action plan, and then also what kind of research innovation could be still needed, but also could be used for getting to this climate neutrality. Next slide, please. So the Onestop platform here, it's in a graphic way of being described. It looks at the climate action plans, as we said, in the Green Deal innovation part. It looked at the investment project preparation and finance, which is a very complicated subject there. The social innovation citizens engagement part in that climate actions plan there. And it looks at what kind of R&I would still be needed or what could be used for example, scaling up and deployment of technologies which already have been developed. For this last part, it is foreseen that there will be large pilots will be launched by this Onestop platform. Next slide, please. So on the first climate action plans, basically what is trying to being achieved there is to look at cities, what are their emissions at this moment there, what could they be doing about the reduction of those emissions, and basically to look at how it would be monitored there and how we could look at replicable scaling up technologies and actions which basically could bring down these emissions to zero by 2030. It is also to look at, for the cities, what are the barriers there and basically how to overcome those. And this has to do with financial, but also with regulatory things like procurement. It's institutional about cities councils don't have always the power to decide on a number of things which also impact on their emissions. It has to do with public acceptance, as we say, the social innovation and also the inclusion of citizens will be very important. We have seen that part of the finances needed for deployment of climate neutrality is not only big, but it's also the benefits for that are not necessarily for the groups who are going to invest in there. So basically it would be in the climate action plan, there would be all these points put together, taking into account the local situation of the cities, which obviously throughout Europe are very differently. You have the what we call usual suspects, like Scandinavians, Western European cities, which are very advanced very often already in ideas about monitoring, about emissions, how to deal with this. We have other cities which did not yet really have climate plans, and we have to take that into account. You have cities who have problems with old industries, old buildings, you have new buildings, and many of the local factors will have to be taken into account for these climate action plans. And I think the idea is to reach out to cities to take that into account and not try to impose a thing which would work for lots of cities, but not really looked at what is really the limiting factor in a local situation. Next slide, please. So how would this work? There would be design about how to get to this, what they call a climate neutral city contract. This is already an anticipating of the Horizon Europe cities mission, where actually the city would engage. It's a contract, we do not know yet how it would look like, but it would be something which is committal about how to get to this 2030 neutrality, and also how it would monitor it and possibly in future have to adapt this. So it would also mean that for a city's level, they would have to overcome also very often sectorial approaches there. What we have seen, by the way, we see the same in the Commission itself, is that we're very often just looking at sectorial issues and not so much at an integrated systematic solutions there. So for example, for the city's mission, in the Commission, there are 12 Directorate Generals involved to support this mission. And this goes from DG Move to DG Climate to DG Energy to DG Growth to many. GRC is in there. There are many others as well involved, which all have not necessarily always the same policy objectives there when they look at the climate neutrality. And obviously, the very important point would be that it should not be reinventing the wheel, so it should be sharing also of experience and best practices between cities there. Next slide, please. The second activity would be looking at investment project preparation and finance. There are a very big number of all kinds of opportunities for cities to get support. It was on the Horizon 2020. You see the whole list there in the second bullet: the Climate Kicks, Intelligent Cities Challenge, GPI Urban, Positive Energy Districts, and so on. And it's to try to see how this could be put together in a coherent way. And basically, the one-stop shop also should help the city to find its way there, because all these funds and activities have their own timing, their own conditions to get access to this. It's also, and we are speaking at this moment as well with the European Investment Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the structural funds there, to see how this also could play a role in there for the deployment of the solutions identified together with the city for getting to this climate neutrality by 2030. It's very clear that money will not only have to come from European funds, there will also have to come from national funds as well as from private and public investors there. And the whole point what the city's mission report also tries to develop there, but it will have to be addressed as well in this call, is how it could be actually leveraging funds together. Next slide, please. Third activity is the social innovation and citizens engagement part. It's for us, for the Commission, it was quite a new experience there. Seeing about listening to citizens what they want instead of telling them what kind of great technologies and research has been already there and available. It is looking at avoiding that there would be climate neutral districts or cities where basically poor people or other people would not be able to live there anymore. But it's mostly also to look at how can citizens be involved, change their habits, because without a change in basically participation, the solutions what can be brought into this contract will never work. It would not be sustainable. So, and again, as I said, there it's also to help cities and communities to exchange experiences and to learn from each other. This would also help for what is one of the obstacles what we have seen, which is the scaling up and replicability of solutions there. So next activity. Next slide, please. So this is the pilots part, which is a very big part, and it is really try to support large-scale pilots there, basically as a forerunner of what is to be there under the Horizon Europe cities mission, if it's to be brought forward. And it is really trying to see and pilot this actually in a certain way of how this could be there to advance here. This will be a very big task for this platform to have calls. It's a cascading fund idea there, to have calls where cities can apply for demonstrating these pilots there. And it will be a very interesting experience for us as well to see how far we can really implement this, what is being recommended also by the city's mission board there. Next slide, please. So the Green Deal call was published already. The deadline is for the 26th of January. We expect to have one project only. As you see, the contribution will be up to 53 million euros. And the pilot part there is 60% actually of this 53 million euro. You see that the pilots, we expect them to be around 500,000 or 1.5 million euro, depending on the expected impact there. So you can also make the calculation how many applications we would try to fund there for the proposals for these pilots. Next slide, please. So now we go to the Horizon Europe, the climate neutral and smart cities proposal itself by the mission board, which was handed over, as I said, a few weeks ago. Next slide, please.
Yes, Harry, I will also ask you, I know that is a monumental task to try to keep it the presentation in a short minutes in order to keep the time. Thank you very much.
Try to go quick, don't worry. Okay. As I said, one of the novelties, what the mission board proposed is this famous climate city contract. It goes beyond what we have seen till now in all kind of other environments where you have some undertakings, but not really commitments there. And it's trying to have in this framework of this contract everything coming together about the climate plan, about who will participate, about how it would be implemented there, what kind of financing would have to be made available and how to do this. And it would basically really give you the power of getting to be part of this city's mission. And there are supposed to be 100 cities. This is the idea of the mission to become climate neutral there. Next one, please. So the mission implementation, you see it here graphically. They see 3 phases. One is to prepare for this, the city climate contract, looking at is there enough sustainable support for a city to apply for this? So they have to organize themselves there with the citizens, the stakeholders, the government, the local governments. Then the co-creation of the contract, how they are going to do it, what is all involved there in terms of money, actions. And then the phase 3, which is basically the implementation and also looking at the funding, how to achieve to that. Next slide, please. So here you see it, another one in terms of what could be a possible way of implementation of this mission under Horizon Europe. You see where you have the call for expression there. You see then the co-creation of the application, the climate contract where it would happen there, and then the implementation of the contract. The big challenge is obviously this is for the city's mission proposal. It's supposed to achieve climate neutrality by 2030. So there's very little time actually to move this forward. Next slide, please. So here you have it. The process is not linear. They will go through each other. You have beginners, you have advanced cities, and then you will have also the front runners, as we would call that. The front runners would basically be very quickly already with their climate plans because they have them already and look more at the implementation only. You will have other cities who will have to start this whole process and will be a bit later there. Next slide, please. So what else under Horizon Europe? Because it's not only the city's mission with where you have activities for the cities. You have under the pillar 2, you have the clusters for the communities and cities there. You have the partnership, which is being discussed at this moment, driving urban transition, and the EIT, who is doing their climate quick kicks as well there. Next slide. So for the cluster 5 cities and communities, they also look at transformation to decarbonize sustainable society, research innovation needed for that, the twin green and digital transition, the EU zero pollution 2030 agenda is all mentioned there, where there is since 1 year now discussion about how to draft possible topics for this. Next one, please. There are 15 topics to be discussed at this moment. Originally, there were many more. And again, they are mostly sectoral and cross-cutting, what you have there in mobility, energy governance, planning design, well, all the usual suspects when you speak about getting to carbon neutrality for a city. Next one, please. So what is the big point at this moment? And then I will conclude. Horizon Europe has not yet been decided at this moment, and neither the missions have been decided at this moment. What happened is that the preparation for Horizon Europe in terms of substance has advanced very well. The missions have been a new element which actually did not synchronize with the other preparation there. So the mission report, as I said, was just given a few weeks ago, and we will now have to look in the Commission about how to translate this into actions for a possible work program. But first of all, the decision has to be made which missions will go forward and how they will do this. These decisions are to be expected by December at the latest, and that means also that then the missions who will be taken forward will be included in the strategic program and then later in the work program. This leaves open a number of questions in terms of what kind of budget would be available for the missions. As you know, the text says it's up to 10% of Pillar 2, but it doesn't say that it should be 10%. It also doesn't say about what money should go to which mission as well. So this is all to be sorted out in the coming weeks. And it also means that in terms of translation of the mission into work program actions, we have to look at how we can get synergies with what has been developed in the clusters already. So I hope that it gives you a little bit of a picture about where we are there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harry. It's a pleasure to see the drive that the European Commission put toward climate neutrality, and seeing this idea of missions, in particular the one with 100 climate neutral city, is really welcome. We have time only for a question, but unfortunately it's not an easy question. So is if Swiss cities can participate. And now I'll split it in two parts. One can participate in the Green Deal, and the other is can participate to the mission in cities.
Yes, so for the Green Deal, yes, they can. I mean, you're associated to Horizon 2020, so you can. For the Horizon Europe, we have to wait what is happening to the association agreement there. In general, I think the only difference for being a non-EU member state is probably the toolbox which can be used when we look at financing and other things, where if you would look at EU funds, by definition, all the member states have, under certain conditions, access to this. And we have to look there for Swiss cities, what kind of specificities should be looked at there. But this is the only difference. Yeah, surely you can apply for the Green Deal call there. And we hope as well for the mission.
We also hope so. So thank you very much, Harry, for your presentation and to show us an overview of these unprecedented funding opportunities. We now move to the second part of this webinar, and we move to the presentation of the city of Zurich with Martina Blum. She is the Deputy Energy Commissioner in the city of Zurich. So thank you, Martina. I let you start sharing the presentation.
Hello, everybody. Ricardo.
Hello, Martina. We can hear you and see you very well.
Thank you very much for the invitation to this webinar. As Ricardo said, I'm Martina Blum, working with the Energy Commissioner of the city of Zurich. And I was invited to share with you an insight on our energy policy, how we want to get Zurich on a path to sustainable energy use. We have a certain concept that's called 2000 watt society. And I will talk to you about this and the challenges ahead. And the challenges and examples I chose are from electricity, but mainly the heating area. And I put some conclusions to the end, which might be helpful for you, maybe also to get inspiration for your proposals. So the 2000 watt society goes back to 2008, so it's more than 10 years back, when more than 76% of the voting population of Zurich said yes, we want to become a 2000 watt society, and we want to become this goal part of our city's constitution. And I won't go too much into the detail. It's a vision kind of, but there are three key messages. And one is that we live on a planet of limited resources, meaning that the average Swiss lifestyle would mean that if everybody would have a similar lifestyle, we would need 3 times our planet Earth. So it's not sustainable regarding resources. What we do then second, which is more in the focus nowadays, is climate change. We have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and fairness is the third aspect, that we want to distribute the resources fairly inter the generation and between the generations. So it was a public referendum, and it's part of the city constitution since 2008. In the city's energy master plan, we had to actually quantify what does it mean. So we have basically 2 goals. One is greenhouse gas emissions. It says in the city constitution from 2008 that we want to get down to 1 ton greenhouse gases per person by 2050. And also to reduce our primary energy by factor 2. So these are 2 important factors, and like every project, we measure on these factors in every energy-related project. So does it contribute to greenhouse gas emission reduction, and does it contribute to reduction of primary energy? And this includes all energy sources, so meaning power, heating, and mobility. And it also includes the so-called gray energy as part of the balance, meaning all the energy that is used to produce and provide the energy. Now we talk a lot about climate neutrality. So, or maybe this, so current year we had 4.4 tons greenhouse gas emissions per person. So it's still a long way to go to 1 ton or to net zero, and at 3,500 watt per person. But if we talk about climate neutrality, we have to look at the whole picture. And we are currently working on this right now in the city. What does it really mean, become climate neutral? The blue part you see in the left chart is the one that we measure, that I showed you, where we want to go down to 1 ton. But this is only half of the truth, or only a third of the truth, because everybody in Zurich uses up to 12 tons per person on average per year, because other than the energy consumption and the mobility, the energy for mobility, we need energy for food, which we cannot directly measure, and we have a lot of other consumption, more than almost half of it, that also needs a lot of energy, which we do not need directly in the city, but is kind of imported. So if we talk about climate neutrality, are we talking about all these whole 12 tons, or are we talking only about the blue part, or maybe only the energy part? So this is something that we are discussing right now. And obviously the city's influence is decreasing when you move forward towards the other consumption areas. If you look at just the energy and mobility part, so the 4.4 tons per person per year that we use right now, almost half of it comes from heating houses, and a smaller part from electricity, and about 20% from land traffic, and another 20% from air traffic, where the city influence is basically zero to change this, other than talking to people and ask them to change their behavior. So the energy master plan mentions 3 steps. First, sufficiency, so basically use less energy and save energy. Then efficiency, we are very familiar with this concept, using less energy to serve the same purpose. And then substitution, to use renewable and low carbon energy sources. I brought you 2 examples, but I want to talk more about the heating part, since this is 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So the upper part is the electricity production, where we have 35% nuclear still. This is the red part in the middle chart. And this is nuclear energy with very high primary energy, and also politically no longer accepted. We have to replace this basically with wind and solar power. So from today, we have to move to 100% hydro, wind, and solar power. But also solar power does not come with no footprint, because the also solar power comes with a CO2 footprint if you really do the whole calculation over the life balance, as far as the whole world is not climate neutral. So we have still to be very conservative with using energy. And then the main challenge here, because this is easier since you can transport electricity, you can invest money in your wind farms, but the really big part is changing the heat supply. As you see today, it's 3/4 is oil and gas heating. And we made an energy concept 2050, where we looked at each district of the city, how this district, how much energy resources are available, and what will be the demand by 2050. So for each district, we looked what would be the energy supply renewable in 2050. And we came up with this. And you see it's 85% renewable to get to the 1 ton. And of course, maybe some examples first, how we want to get there. The Zurich is increasing the number of lake water networks, energy networks. We have a waste incineration network that will be increased. And currently in construction is an energy network that uses waste heat from the wastewater plant. And what is very important is that it's coordinated, so that you coordinate energy planning with city planning. As I said, you have to look at each district. So do you have enough renewable energy in this district to really develop the city there, to have more people, more houses, more demand? So this is a very new development in recent years, that we very try to work closer together with city planning. And now, of course, you see, we were talking about our goal in the city constitution currently is 1 ton per person per year. This will change, obviously, since we have the Paris Agreement now. And the city of Zurich also already has signed the contract with other cities that they want to fulfill their Paris Agreement, moving towards climate neutrality. And this basically means, since we use a lot of energy still for food and for other consumption that we cannot reduce, where we need, where we still have a CO2 footprint, our footprint really needs to be down to 0 from the energy sector. So it's not a net 0, but it's a really 0 coming from the energy resources, because otherwise you won't have enough footprint for the food, for example. So from the concept 2050, you see some districts that we thought for 2050, they are fine. They are already 100% renewable, but there are some districts where we still have a small part of natural gas. And if we want to be really climate neutral, we are reworking the concept now, and we have to see how we really can get down also these small parts, 15% still fossil. It means, so we have critical districts like the Old Town, where it's very difficult, partly, or some areas you cannot have ground heat, you cannot use ground heat, maybe you cannot have another energy source. And biogas is also only limited. So we have, we can only use biogas, organic gas to a small part. So basically it means we need to have more line-based supply, and we are reworking the concept now to 0 emissions. Some conclusions also from our work, not just from the presentation. Obviously, we need a faster modernization of the buildings. So if we have more efficient buildings, we can serve more buildings with the same amount of energy. And we also need an accelerated change of the energy sources that I showed you, meaning that we have to work on these line-based energy sources. So we have to build up the district heating networks. And as I said, it's very important, the coordination, energy and city planning. And also the information on this. We are building an energy platform now to show the citizen, so what is an energy district? Usually people are not familiar. I mean, 75% have their oil or gas heater, so we need to inform them about our policy and about the future, that they will probably be have a heating network, that the buildings will be connected, and they have to be informed about the opportunities, at what time frame they can expect their heating network to be available. For example, if they have to change their gas heating now, but can only connect in 5 years to the network. So we need to have a transition phase. We have to help them to move towards this transition. But also we need comprehensive measures on all levels of regulations, substitution, efficiency and sufficiency. And as you've seen, I've not talked about mobility, but 20% of our emissions are land traffic and 20% are air traffic. So we are working on the land traffic. We have a mobility strategy for that, but measures regarding on air travel are imperative, and the influence of the city is very limited on this. And of course, if we talk about climate neutrality, we have to be honest, and we have to include our consumption, the imported greenhouse gas emissions, when we talk about 0 emissions, and we have to try to reduce them as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martina. It's really inspiring to see the goal that Zurich has set for himself for this 2000 watt society, and also the so many actions that are taking. And also, I think everyone can understand the complexity of the challenge that is facing you. So now is with pleasure that we move to the second speaker. So we have Frederick Heidmann from the Cantonal and Urban Development on the Canton of Basel City. So thank you very much, Frederick, for being with us. We leave the floor to you.
Thank you very much and welcome to everybody here. And I would like to thank to Ricardo and Euresearch to get the possibility to present Basel here at the event. As Ricardo already said, I'm Frederick Heidmann. I'm working for the Cantonal and Urban Development of the City of Basel, which is located within the Department of Residential Affairs of the canton. My presentation will be about the Smart City Basel, and it will have like the thesis that good governance leads the way towards sustainable urban development. And first of all, my agenda will be that I will present the sustainable development concept of the city of Basel, and then I will move to the smart city strategy of Basel, and at the end I will present concrete projects that are occurring there. So sustainable developments is understood in Basel, or is currently, it's basically based on the Agenda 2030 and on the SDGs. And sustainable development is also part of the cantonal constitution and seen as an aspect that has to be integrated into all policy fields, instead of being an add-on. This means also that sustainable development is understood as a process. And within the definition of sustainable development of the canton, 6 topics were defined, which are population, governmental action, natural basis for life, social cohesion, economic development, and basic needs and well-being. And these topics are not sustainable in themselves, but they have to be targeted by the maintenance of value, by equity, and the capacity for action. So we have a really holistic view on sustainable development of 360 degrees. And it also means that all departments and political areas are tackled by challenges of sustainable development and have to work together. And the aim is to identify development conflicts and in a transparent manner and to search for possible solutions. So if we come to the smart city strategy of the city of Basel, this means that the ongoing digitalization also has to be used specifically for the sustainable development of the canton. So the guiding principle is that the administration of Baselstadt uses modern technologies and digital data, specifically for the sustainable development of the canton. The targets behind it are that it contributes the digitalization contributes to the quality of life of now and in the future, while conserving resources, natural resources. And it also is a matter of general public interest, and the canton is made it transparent to the public. So it's an inclusive approach. Thereby, the data protection is guaranteed, and it is worked as a cross-sectoral topic, because the smart city affects all departments of the canton and has to be coordinated across departments. So this also includes that opportunities and risk of smart city have to be negotiated jointly and within a social and political dialogue. So, for example, risks have to be named, like a blackout, for example, that could occur and would affect all digital advisors within the city. Then we come to how it works actually within, or how the administration of Basel, of the city of Basel, is working. It means we have the target to work open and to cooperate across organizational boundaries in order to open space for innovation and for ideas that can be tested. And the Baselstadt is therefore a member of association networks and working groups that are active in the smart city area. So we are, for example, we have members of city associations or private associations. So I come to the implementation of smart city. It takes place through concrete projects together with science companies, etc. And the focus thereby is not on the technology, but on the people of Basel. So we would, instead of, for example, using a technology and looking for where it could be implemented, we are looking at problems, specific challenges of the society, and how technology and digital data could be used to solve this problem. I will give some examples of projects, concrete examples of cross-cutting smart city projects in Basel. So the health department, for example, developed the first responder app, which will be released in October now, and which is currently in an internal testing stage. And it was developed for those with cardiovascular diseases, and the app can provide faster help. So if someone has a disease and needs help, he or she can use the app and call for help, and someone who's really close to him or her with the proper and it knows how to help, it can be worked through the app. Furthermore, we have an open government data, which is provided by the statistical department of Basel, where a lot of data is open to the public. So, for example, now about data about the COVID-19 diseases can be thrown there. And furthermore, we have in the area, now we come to climate change, for example, in the area of noise pollution and air pollution, there are a lot of tests going on within the city with sensoric systems. So citizens can go to the internet or to the platform and look how is the noise pollution and the air pollution in a specific place within the city. So now I come to another project, the Smart City Lab of Basel, which is a collaboration between the SBB, the Swiss Federal Railways, and the canton. You can see it here. It's painted in white here on the slide, and it is an old goods station and rail network, which is owned by the SBB and which is located right in the center of the city, really close to the main railway station. And on the site, there are halls that are empty and can be used temporarily for smart city pilot projects. Since 2018 startups and innovative projects are testing their new smart projects. They have to be smart, and the aim is that these findings of these projects can be used for the development of the whole district that you see there. It will be because from about 2025 the whole area will be transformed into a mixed district. That means that it will be partly for residential and for commercial purpose. So more precisely, this means that our focus also in the Smart City Lab is on networking between partners and current projects. And I will give you some examples of projects that are going on there. First of all, I'll just tell you that in general, I think for about 30 projects are located there currently. So it's always changing. It's a lot of things going on there. But now, for example, there's a project which is called Upvolt, and they are recycling batteries of primarily of e-bikes, and they are upcycling them for the same purpose or for other purposes. So, for example, for energy storage, they can be used. And now they are looking for the project owners are looking for collaboration with other partners of the lab. So, for example, with e-mobility projects that are located there and with photovoltaic projects, so that solutions that are collaboratively developed can be found. Yeah. And another project is Grocer, which is a vertical farming project. They have a low use of pesticides, and they are currently looking for a sustainable solution of energy, because this is a problem. They use a lot of light for their plants, and if the whole energy is from not sustainable, the whole solution is not sustainable. So they are now looking for a collaboration with photovoltaic, for example. Another project is naturally unpacked, so it's a sustainable solution for food systemic problems. They sell unpacked local and organic food, and have also a social focus. And the food can be ordered by internet, and they deliver it in eco-friendly and locally produced bags. So we have a lot of different projects there on the lab. And the aim is to work in clusters, to have collaboration, to find better solutions through the collaboration and through, And the aim is also to include the whole population of Basel, to have their participation, and to enable the dialogue about digitalization and problems and challenges, and also what it could help to foster the quality of life within the city. This is also something which is still open. We are looking for solutions how to enable citizens to come, and how to have a better exchange of interests and of meanings. And until now we had a focus on mobility and logistics, so that is also because of the location of the lab. It is right on close to the rail network, but now we are opening up to other topics such as climate and energy, or the use of public space is also one topic, or circular economy. To conclude, I would like to state once again that smart government means good governance. It has to be, the administration has to be friendly and efficient and has to foster trust. And first of all, it also means that the networking and empowerment of the administration itself has to take place. We are following these principles by having a working group on smart city, an interdepartmental working group, which also means that it has to take place a cultural change within the administration. And we think now it is located within the Department of Residential Affairs, which is really good for us because we are working on cross-cutting issues and like sustainable development, and we network with the other departments and have the coordination. And yeah, to conclude once again, a smart administration thinks and works in a networked way, and in order to use resources optimally and to be able to cope with the complexity in smart projects and sustainable development in general. So we are working on this. Thank you very much and for your attention. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Friederike. It's very nice to see how Basel, the canton of City Basel, is trying to use digital technology to drive this transition, but also how there is the will of using the city as a living lab for testing this technology. So we now move to the third testimonial. So we move to the city of Morges with Mark Bungener. He is the delegate to the environment of the city of Morges. Thank you, Mark, for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to need to share my screen. Give me a second, sorry. There we go. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you and see you well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thank you to the European Commission. Thank you, Ricardo, and the whole team for having the city of Morges with you today. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Marc Bungener. I am responsible for the environmental policy of the city of Morges. Specifically, this concerns coordination of energy and biodiversity policy. We do not, my little sector does not realize sort of action on the ground. We're more in coordination and supervision of what the administration is doing. I'm going to present to you today a quick context about Morges. So where are we? Where do we want to go in terms of energy and climate? What we have achieved so far. And I'm going to paint quite a bit of a dark picture in my opinion, but and then we can continue with why it's difficult for us to go faster. So you can see on the little map on the right, Morges is just on the north coast of Lake Leman. It's about 10 kilometers from the city of Lausanne. We are a small city in a big agglomeration. And, you know, Morges has long been considered a village, but now the politicians of Morges are being confronted by strong developing urban policy, which is linked with the agglomeration, and it's creating a real identity crisis and a nice challenge to deal with within our own administration. How do we rise up to the challenge of making a sustainable city from what we used to conceive still 20 years ago as a village? We have the European Energy Award, Cité de l'Énergie. We have 4 square kilometers of surface, a population of 16,000 people. 70% of our buildings are housing. 90% fossil fuel consumption for heating on the territory. We consume about 235 gigawatt hours per year and emit 47 kilotons of CO2, which is about 2.7 per person. And this is just for buildings. Okay, this is not, so 2.7 tons per person per year. This is just the energy consumption in the building sector. And we have an incentive fund that sustains, supports action by the population and the private sector, which is supplied by a tax on electricity of 180,000 francs per year. So Marge in 2018 realized an energy strategy. We had quite a bit of trouble deciding how exactly we were going to do this because we have quite limited resources. We're lucky enough to have the critical mass to have an environmental unit. So what we decided to do was to develop 5 axes on which over the next 15 years, we would act. And we decided to focus specifically to begin with on the energy sector of buildings and renovation. So mobility, unfortunately, we haven't been able to dive into the details as much as we have for energy. That's going to be for a second iteration once we've realized this first one. We want to focus on, of course, renewable energy, construction of efficient buildings, energy-related renovation of buildings, and communal infrastructure, encouraging and promoting sustainable mobility, and lastly, and very importantly, dialogue with the population on these subjects. So the 3 main objectives that we begin with are specifically for the buildings on communal territory. By 2035 and per capita, we are more or less going for the objectives which had been set by the Confederation in the 2050 energy strategy. So 43% less final energy consumption, 13% less electricity consumption, and 41% less CO2 emissions by 2035. And this is in comparison for Marge with 2017 levels, not 2000. So the objectives are just a little bit tougher, considering the fact that we're going from 2017. So our diagnostic, which we did with the help of CREM, Centre de Recherche Énergétique et Municipale, and Navitas Consilium, who are basically engineers and our partners in this domain, projected us into 2035 by considering that we would have 22% extra energy reference area, 22% newly constructed energy reference area. We would lose about 2% of the buildings through demolition, and increase in population by 30%, a reduction in heating needs by 4.5% if we would achieve our objectives, and an increase in electricity consumption of 13%. This allowed us to develop a scenario in which we managed to project, according to our energy consumption now and the energy consumption which we need to achieve, how the energy vectors would be consumed and how the heat demand could change for our territory if we can achieve what we plan. You see here in red, we have oil for heating in buildings, and in, I'm sorry, I believe this is orange, I am colorblind. This is gas. So by 2035, with a 30% increase in population, we are reducing by about 5% our total consumption for heating. We are reducing drastically the oil consumption, reducing gas consumption, increasing the consumption of renewable gas. And we take into account that it has half of the CO2, the fossil emission of natural gas. And there's a whole specter of new vectors for heating which appear, like heat pumps, like cold water systems, etc. We needed to figure a way to communicate this to our politicians and our population. the problem is that in our city, it's quite hard to talk about energy. It's not something that talks to everyone. Many people don't really understand what a kilowatt hour is or what it really means to read that on their electricity bill. So we have to translate this as much for our politicians as we do for our population. So we developed 5 principles to reach the objectives, which mean that we need to renovate by Minergie standards 16 buildings per year, which would be equivalent to, I believe, 1,200 square meters of reference of surface of energy reference area. Sorry. We need to inject 0.7% of biogas or renewable gas into our network every year. We have several objectives concerning the development and connecting of heating networks. We want to reduce the need for fuel, oil, and electric heating, which means that we would replace 50 of these heating systems per year in the city. And we want to develop local electricity production by installing 3,000 square meters of photovoltaic solar panels per year, which would be equivalent to about 10 gigawatts, I believe, in 2035. This, as an example, is a map of our plans for district heating networks and for energy concepts, which have been so planned out for specific areas in the city. We have 8 of them. Two of them are basically, well, one is already realized, one of them is on the way, and the rest, well, we need to develop. We are happy to have inside our own administration a utility company, which is partnering up with a private company to develop these networks so that the city can remain, seeing as we now own the gas network, so that we can preserve an income and this link with the population once the gas network leaves its place to these new district heating systems. We also have recommendations which we put basically in our communal plan, which encourage people to seek solutions other than what oil and gas can give them currently, even though the law still allows them to develop, and the gas network is unfortunately still developing. This is one problem that we're having within our own administration. It's how to balance different political interests, seeing as my unit for environmental policy is in one sector under one politician, and the unit for developing the maintenance of the utilities is under another politician. If we achieve our objectives, we would overshoot our initial goals by reaching 52% CO2 emissions per capita, 43% final energy consumption per capita, and 15% energy consumption per capita. Now, unfortunately, we haven't really done much. Why? Because it's taking a long time. The next slide will talk about these difficulties. But I would, before I do that, try and talk about what we have done and what we can be proud of. We have worked to develop photovoltaic installations on our buildings, and we are renovating some of the buildings that belong to the city to lead by example. For the private sector and population, we organized a group call for tenders for photovoltaic installations, which has unfortunately not been a success. We only managed to get 7 solar installations out of this group call. We were hoping for more. We have given since 2007 1.5 million francs worth of subsidies, and we are now injecting 5% of biogas through certificates into our network. As I said, we've developed several heating networks, and we organize events for awareness raising. I'm sorry, one of my titles is missing. The next column right here is supposed to be called In Progress. We need to develop a monitoring program so that we can be more transparent. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have the structure yet and the resources. We will, by next year, thank goodness, be able to show through a dashboard to our population and our politicians how much energy the city is consuming. And through a small calculator, the citizen will be able to see in what percentage he, through his own energy consumption, is contributing to the city's energy goals. We are updating our incentive fund, and we want to modify the municipal master plan to include these energy goals so that we can really develop the institutional memory on these goals and partner up with the legislative branch of government on the local level. We are going to organize a group call for tenders in building and energy renovation. And we have a couple of research programs going on with HEC, Hautes Études Commerciales. It's the business school in Lausanne, at the University of Lausanne, specifically targeting communication tools and marketing when it comes to energy. So how can we be better at transmitting and to transmit efficient messages when it comes to awareness raising for energy consumption? And finally, why can't we go faster? Well, as I said, the maturing process of energy policy is slow. We are few here working on this. Everybody is overworked, and to be honest, sometimes it's quite terrifying when you see all that has to be done and what's really happening on the ground. We're of course having a few issues with financial resources, but I wouldn't say this is our main problem. When it comes to coordination, well, we have a few issues inside the administration. I told you about some of them. There's different political influences. We have issue when it comes to communicating with the population and the private sector, because sometimes, I mean, let's just say the response that we get from our communication and our messages seems to be very small. And another issue that we have when it comes to the coordination with fellow cities and the canton specifically is that we feel like everybody's doing his own thing on his own side. And each city my size is developing his own climate policy, his own energy policy, and it just seems like we could be doing a lot more. And this is also a criticism to myself and certainly my team. We could be better networkers when it comes to sharing, and this also has something to do, I think, with the vertical system in which we are, the silos in which we work in the Swiss communal political system. So there we go. I've said most of what I wanted to say. I just wanted to say again, thank you to Ricardo for organizing this. And just on a personal note, I've spoken specifically here about what it takes for Mosh to achieve goals just for the building sector, but we know that this is not the only sector that is concerned by climate change. And I wonder if the communal structure or the system right now, the way it's set up, is capable of delivering the change, especially when it comes to dialogue with the population and engagement. Are we capable of giving the support to our population to develop individual engagement, and what Mr. Tuinder called social innovation and citizens engagement. This is something that I'm really looking forward to working on in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's very nice to see that independently from the size of the city municipalities, there are energy plan in place that try to reach sustainability. And I would like to particularly thank you for sharing also the difficulties of reaching these goals. That is something that often no one's like to share. So I think your speech has been very inspiring, and every challenges can be transformed in an opportunity. And we hope that breaking these silos, engaging citizens is what we are going this direction. So I apologize to all the participants and the speaker. We have a bit of delay. I will take one question only for speaker. I will go in reverse order. I will go to Mark first. I will ask you to keep it short, if possible, the answer. So Mark, the question for you is if you think that as a 16,000 inhabitant city, do you face challenges that are bigger or smaller than the challenges that are faced by Zurich or Basel?
That's a tough question. I think, well, especially we are in an urban area, I believe they are the same challenges. I think we share the same vision and the same ambitions as well. Maybe in terms of the resources that we have, and this is a hypothesis, we are a bit less lucky, to put it that way, because I guess there's a lot that comes with critical mass and economies of scale when it comes to building the size of a team. But no, I don't think that it's more difficult for us. I think we've faced the same challenge, and I'm also grateful to work in a city of the size of Morges rather than a smaller one where, for example, somebody in my position would be only working at 50%, or he would have a whole load of other responsibilities to deal with. So I hope I've answered the question.
Indeed, you did. Thanks, Mark. Friederike, if you can unmute yourself, we have a question for you specific on the geography of Basel, that is a city that is on the border. And speaking about in particular European funding, there is this European dimension of having European corridors. So the question is if there are collaboration also across the border.
There is collaboration across the border. We have the three countries are working together within the region. But it's also difficult. It's also really hard to find the same vision, to have the same goals, to work collaboratively together on one issue, because first of all, you have to, we would have to define the framework in which we are working on some issues. But there is the goal to work together, and there's a collaboration going on.
Thank you, Frederica. And Martina, the final question is for you, and is that Zurich is a city of innovation with excellent universities, University of Applied Science, and huge startup communities. These researchers and innovators that have innovative cities, is there a way that they can contact the municipality to show them and showcase what they want to do and collaborate with you in innovative projects?
Yeah, definitely. We are in many areas. We are working with ETH or other institutions, and we also, since almost 2 years now, the city has a smart city program similar to the one from Basel. So there are many tools, kind of, where we want to improve this working together with research institutions and other institutions. For example, one of these tools, there is a kind of a toolbox, is a fellowship. So a team or a department can apply for a research fellow. So if you have a question internally that we think we want someone to think out of the box, we can apply for this, and then a research fellow will be part of our team for half a year to help us on our problems, kind of. So they're trying to improve the collaboration in this part as well. It's in the presidential department as well.
Thank you very much, Martina. So we now reach the end of our event. We know that we gave you a lot of information in a very short amount of time, but we at Euresearch are here to help you accessing this European funding. We do events like today in which we inform about the opportunities that are out there, but we also advise you one-to-one to see if your project and innovation idea fits European fundings. We are mandated by the Swiss Ministry of Research, Innovation and Education, and our services are for free. I would like to conclude with a note on what is coming in front of us, and the future is called Horizon Europe. That is the next European framework program, and is going to be the biggest framework program for Europe. And inside this, the scope of sustainability is present with the goal of the Green Deal, as we've seen before, the mission in particular on sustainable and smart cities, but also with many collaboration with public and private sector called the partnership, other programs called the Digital Europe program for the digitalization of Europe, and other European funding that we have not discussed now, for example, ELENA on energy efficiency and sustainable transport specific for municipalities. So there is a lot of opportunities out there. And if you are not convinced yet that now is the moment to join European funding, I have a message from you, from a colleague of mine.
Would you like to work on the great global challenges, advance your research, and get funded for it? Many of today's global problems are so large and complex that society needs to work together across borders in order to find solutions. The collaborative projects in Horizon Europe, the biggest research and innovation funding program in Europe, give you the opportunity to contribute towards these solutions by working in teams spread across Europe and the whole world. But these projects not only help solve the great global challenges, they are also a great way to boost research in your organization. By working across borders, you will become more competitive and you will integrate in international research communities. Collaboration is not only across borders, but also across sectors and disciplines. You will work with partners from industry, the public sector, and even with ordinary citizens. Any kind of public or private entity can join, from any EU member state or country associated to Horizon Europe. And there is a lot of help out there to get you started in forming or joining a project team. Convinced? Would you like to expand your research horizons and help solve the great global challenges? Then join a Horizon Europe collaborative project and call us at Euresearch. We are here to help.
With this, we conclude this event. I would like to thank the speakers, Harry, Martina, Friederike, and Mark, and all of the participants. And now I'm closing the event, and I will launch a poll for evaluation of the event, because your feedback will help us improving our services. So thank you very much all, and have a nice day.